Alright everyone, welcome back to another Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes video with Fat Phil, and we're going to be talking about if being free to play is dead inside of Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes. We're going to kind of talk about how being free to play has changed and why it's so much more difficult now. Whether it's more difficult now to be free to play and why that is. So we're going to get into those things, but a couple things first. One, I've got to thank my channel members so much for their continued support. These guys are all rock stars. If you are interested in joining, I've got a link down below. Otherwise, all I can ask is that you hit that thumbs up button to like this video and subscribe for more content like this. Another thing I do want to make sure that I get out here is that I had a GAC last night that I got to stream, and a lot of it I was silent because I was actually holding my infant. I'm going to be editing that and releasing that for everybody to see with additional commentary because I'd really like to talk you guys through that GAC. It was a lot of fun, so let's get into our video, though, and talk about being free to play. So, as many of you know, for a very long time, I was free to play until those wonderful Lightspeed bundles came around. And one of the things that I've seen a lot of players asking is they're like, oh, it's impossible to be free to play now. Like, you can't do it. So, my answer to that is yes, you can. It's just as easy to be free to play now. Right? It's just as easy to not spend money in the game now as it was a year ago, as it was 2 years ago. The difference is that spending small amounts of money in the game now can get you much farther than it used to. So let's kind of dive into a couple of those examples and walk you through how this has changed. So the first major thing that ever came in was the Hyperdrive Bundle. This, in my opinion, was the first pack that came out where it was almost a no-brainer for a lot of people. That if you're like, hey, what's the best way I could spend money? The Hyperdrive Bundle was the answer. This used to even be $100. Now it's $50, but when this was $100, this saves you months of time getting up to level 85. It gives you plenty of resources. And when you look at this, like pack, one of the things I just want to show you of how lucrative this pack can be here. Forget all of this stuff, right? Forget the characters. If you just look at the resources, there's 2,000 crystals in here. To put that in perspective, $10 gets you 1,300 crystals, $20 gets you 2,800. So you're looking at roughly, what, $15 worth of crystals, right? Somewhere in that range, $15 worth of crystals alone. So 30% of that pack's value is in the crystals alone. 30% of this value, $15 of this 50, is in this right here. So you can see why this is such a great pack, but this made being free to play extremely more difficult because it gave you all of these characters at level 80, at 5-star, and this gave you massive boosts in the game, particularly when you look at the characters like Bastila and then the First Order characters. This pack is what really transformed the game into rushing characters like Jedi Knight Revan and Supreme Leader Kylo Ren. Right? Those hyperdrive rushes were kind of built on this: get your Jedi Knight Revan and get Supreme Leader Kylo Ren. At the time in the game, that made the most sense. It got you great characters for the raids, for territory battles, all that stuff. And then, but most importantly, in Squad Arena, you'd be able to dominate. If other players in your shard weren't buying the Hyperdrive Bundle, you were getting first place rewards every day, which at the time was 500 crystals for first place. Just let that sink in, that every day, 500 crystals for first place in Squad Arena. It was the most lucrative time to be number one in Squad Arena. And early on, those crystals made a massive impact to these players who had this Hyperdrive Bundle. So it was a huge advantage, and it really hurt the free-to-play player base from the standpoint that you were now months behind someone that you might have started in the arena at the same time, and then they bought the Hyperdrive and you didn't, and now they're getting far better rewards earlier, and they're just exploding their progress. But it didn't change whether it was hard enough to be free-to-play, just made it harder to be a competitive free-to-play. So then came the Grand Arena change. A lot of you probably don't know this, but we talk about it. But Grand Arena changed. I forget when it was. I think it was 2021. They went from Squad Arena being where the crystals were to Grand Arena. They took crystals out of Squad Arena and they moved them to Grand Arena. I know that some of you will say, "Oh, my matchmaking's ridiculous," but this was one of the best changes you could have gotten for free to play. This put your crystal income much more firmly in your hands. You didn't have to worry about if you'd be able to climb up against somebody who had a Supreme Leader Kylo Ren from the Hyperdrive Bundle, or that there was a Shard Mafia that wouldn't let you get above 50th place, which was a thing. Like, there were a lot of things like that. So this GAC change kind of took a lot of that out. And if you really think about it, the system is rigged to get to 500. Just a side note here, I spoke about this last night on stream. Somebody asked why, if I scout or not. And I said no, because the Grand Arena system is designed that you win as many GACs as you lose. That's their goal. Their goal is that in the course of, 18 Grand Arenas, you've won 9 and you've lost 9. That's their goal. That's what they want. And if you look across the game, it's pretty consistent that that's what players are doing. That you might have a few players who are going 5-4, but that on the vast majority of players, they're winning as often as they're losing. So this Grand Arena change was a good thing. But the other thing, that helps free-to-play is how slowly the Fleet Arena meta changes. When I came into this game, back into the game, I should say, in 2020, the Negotiator and Malevolence were kind of ruling the roost. And then eventually we got the Executor. And that kind of completely flipped the Fleet Arena meta on its head because there was no longer that parity with a Negotiator Malevolence. There was just one fleet to rule them all, being the Executor. So that fleet kind of changed the game for a long time. There were some counters that came about. There was nothing really super consistent. Then we got the Profundity. The Profundity completely, blew the Executor out of the water offensively. But defensively, the Executor could still compete. So as a free-to-play, if you'd went and got your Executor, you were still able to climb against Profundities. And that happened, and that was a long time coming that, hey, I could now build towards Profundity, or I could be building some other things because my Executor is still winning in Fleet Arena. And now, finally, we have the Leviathan here, where, yes, this fleet is easily the best fleet in the game. It's one that, unfortunately, there is some consistent counters, but it does require some expensive things. I understand that. But all things considered, the Profundity can still at times beat this fleet. So you can still climb with your Profundity. So while you might not be able to climb with Executor, you can climb with this one. And a lot of players don't have this fleet simply because of Conquest. So as a free-to-play, you can be very competitive in the Fleet Arena area because of how much more slowly the meta changes. You think in the time that we've gone through, 4 fleets of being the cream of the crop in the Fleet Arena here between the Negotiator, Executor, Profundity, and Leviathan, we've had how many Galactic Legends released during that time? We've had how many Conquest characters, how many Omicrons, Datacrons, all these things that have come out that have upset the meta. So the fleet's much more slow, and that is one of the big things. If you want to be a successful free-to-play and be competitive, you've gotta invest in ships because they have such a longer shelf life. But then came what I would say was the really death blow to competitive free-to-play, and that was these Hyperdrive Bundles. I'm not going to beat around the bush. One of the things that kept players competitive as a free-to-play was that there wasn't a lot of good ways to spend money. In the grand scheme of this game, there was not a lot of really solid ways that you could spend money, or that you could spend a little bit of money and get a lot of value. That for the sake of argument here, you think $100 right here would get you all of the wrecks you needed for Starkiller, get you about 85% of the way to Rey, and say, 65% of the way to Kylo because it ignored the ships. So that is significant. For $100, that was absurd. And if you kicked out Starkiller here for a second, for $50, you could basically get almost all the way to Rey and the majority of the way through Supreme Leader Kylo Ren, which is the same price of that Hyperdrive Bundle. These packs completely upset what it took to be a competitive free-to-play, because now they basically sold Galactic Legends for an extremely low value. Now, I know all of you are like, Phil, why are we always talking about these Lightspeed bundles? As a competitive free-to-play, what I'm trying to tell you is that it's not impossible to be free-to-play anymore. It's very easy. Just don't put your credit card in game and then you can't spend money. You know what I mean? That's easy to do. It's harder to be competitive and not spend that money because of things like this. And I understand that, right? I myself broke free-to-play so that I could get Rey because I recognized that I wasn't going to be able to compete at the level I wanted to. Now, if you are free-to-play, don't think that these packs are unfair. Everybody has an equal opportunity to purchase them. And if you're like, oh, well, I already farmed Rey and I already farmed Kylo, you got the benefit of having those characters in your account longer. The only people I would say that really, really, really got quote-unquote, screwed by this was if you were currently farming for either character. And if you were, sorry, that's just the nature of the game. It's one of those unfortunate things where that's just the nature that this game brings. But all that said, being a competitive free-to-play has completely changed because players could just do small little bursts of, crystals and things before that really wouldn't make that much of an impact. Think about the $100 that you would spend to get your Star Killer Rey and, the progress towards Kylo. Think about all of that. Just for the sake of argument, look what $30 gets you for Paz Vizsla. 30 shards and some gear. Right? Oh, 5 Omicrons in there too. I mean, this is nothing. $30? You got the whole First Order faction for $10. So it's so much easier now with a small amount of money to make a significant difference in your account. And that, I think, is where I'm wondering if Capital Games is going to head down that road. That it's not going to be impossible to be free to play, but if you want to be a competitive free to play, or you want to be competitive in this game, you've really, really got to be good with your resources. That before, you think somebody spent $100 on a vault of crystals. Over the course of a year, they spent, those crystals. Not going to make that much of an impact to their account. Like, you probably wouldn't know that that person spent 100 crystals over the course of a year, right? Like, you wouldn't really notice that change. But if you spent $10 on that Lightspeed bundle, you notice it, right? So I guess what I'm trying to get at is that being a competitive free-to-play is what has changed, but being free-to-play hasn't. So if you want to be competitive, the things you have to do are investing in those things like those fleets. Fleets are going to be the game changer. Your fleets are going to be where you need to be investing in because they move so much more slowly. Think about it. If you go get your Profundity or you go get Leviathan and that ship can carry you through the game for 2+ years, you're solid, right? You've made a massive, huge investment that's going to pay off for a long time to come. The other thing I would say you're going to have to do if you want to be competitive is you have to sacrifice a little bit of fun. Maybe, Jedi Master Kenobi is your favorite character or Lord Vader is your favorite character, but the Jabba, Leia, Jedi Master Luke, those three, farming them together is far better. Is it necessarily fun to do that? Not really, because you've got to build up some characters who aren't that good. You got to think of Lobots and Jabba and or Jawa, not Jabba, Jawa, Gamorrean Guard Mob Enforcer. Like, those are trash characters. No. But the Galactic Legends that they farm all kind of intermingle together. They give you a lot of really good things that you need to compete in conquest, territory battles, territory wars, assault battles, things like that. So you have to sacrifice a little bit of that fun, right? And that was what AP Gaines always talks about, that will to live equation, and that being competitive at times means that you're not always going to have fun. Unless you're someone like myself where I have this mentality, and I got it, Julian Edelman had said it, and I love the way he said it. When he was talking about being on the Patriots, and he said winning is fun. And that's kind of the way that I look at it. I want to be competitive. If it means that I need to maybe not have as much fun when I play Conquest, then yeah, I'm going to do that. But overall, guys, being free to play has not changed. What's changed is how competitive you can be, because they're now reducing the price of packs that have a significant impact to your account. That, before it was pretty easy to be free to play because it took you hundreds of dollars to really be competitive. But now you're telling me with $10 you can be super competitive, or $100 it's insane. Yeah, you know what? It does change. So I don't want to discourage you from being free to play, and I don't want to discourage you from spending money or encourage it. I just want to give you what I think is happening. That they recognized that we need to maybe increase revenue, or maybe we need to see how we can get more people to engage with Grand Arena, engage with Conquest, engage with these game modes that generate revenue for us. Because without generating revenue, this game goes away. So for all the people who, and I'm one of them, right? I don't really spend money on this game. And we don't really get a say in terms of, oh, this isn't fair or fun, because we're not really spending the money. Without the money, the game goes away. So thank a whale, thank the people who bought the packs, because it's going to keep this game alive for how much longer, because they're going to sell more of them. So that's the video, guys. That's kind of where I stand right now on is free-to-play dead. It's not dead. Being a competitive free-to-play isn't even dead. It just takes a lot more dedication, a lot more practice, and you've got to be smarter. You can't afford to sit there and ask to build Sith Eternal when he's not going to do anything for you. So I love all you guys. I try not to get too down and stuff, but I think this is a topic that kind of hits close to home, because as someone who wasn't spending money, I always had this, and I'll say the flip side of here, keep rambling on, that the free-to-play do play an important part in this game. The only reason people spend money is to stay ahead of those who don't, right? Why? You know, Manchester City doesn't just spend money for fun. They spend money to be the best team in the, in England, the best team in Europe. They don't spend money just because they think it's fun. You know, that's what Chelsea does. I hate my club. But all that said, people don't just spend money because they want to. They want to be competitive. They want to stay ahead of everybody else who isn't spending. So you do need that balance. You need those players who aren't going to spend, or else there's no one that you need. There's no reason to purchase anything. But you also need those players who are willing to make those purchases. So that's the end of the video. I love all you. May the force be with you, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Cheers.